Give me a few short minutes here today and I can help you improve communication in your marriage. Let's start with the basic communication model that I teach in leadership training, in couples seminars, in anything that involves communication. It starts with an understanding of where the message is going. So it starts with a sender, the sender of the message. If it's a verbal communication, this is the speaker, okay? If it's radio and television, this is the point of origin for the signal. And then it goes over to a receiver. The message travels this direction. So in verbal communication, this is the listener. Think of it as the speaker and the listener. Let's say that the sender has message A in mind. This is what I want to communicate to you if you're the receiver. A. What happens first? First, the sender has to encode the message. So encoding is the way that the sender puts the message into some kind of a deliverable medium. Encoding is typically language. So today we're using English here at Live on Purpose TV. I'm encoding everything that I want to send to you in English. Then the message travels over to the receiver, but what has to happen on that end? Obviously the receiver has to do some decoding, which if you don't speak English, you're probably looking at the titles because that decodes it into your language. But if you already speak English, you've already got a decoder installed. Oh, sorry, slipped into another code there. If you speak Finnish, then you have a decoder for that. If you don't, then you probably didn't understand what I just said. See how this works? So the sender sends that message over. After encoding it, it gets decoded on the receiver's end. But there's one other thing. On the way, that signal has to pass through this big cloud of noise. And this can be physical noise, it could be mental noise, it could be all the stuff that's going on in the brain of either the sender or the receiver. All of this noise gets in the way, so that often what happens is the receiver picks up B, not A. And then the receiver reacts to and responds to and assumes that B is what was intended, when it could be totally different from what the sender was sending. With everything that goes on, it's amazing we can communicate at all. What do we do to improve communication based on this model? Let's talk about 4 specific strategies that take all of this into account. In a marriage, there's even more noise than there is in some other communications because of the relationship dynamics, because of the history, because of how you've been hurt in the past, whatever it is. So this first step is to calm the noise in your own mind. I say in your mind, but I also mean in your body. Because when you get triggered emotionally, your body triggers chemicals that get pumped into your bloodstream. We call this flooding. Okay, if you can picture the analogy of a flood in your home, well, you're being flooded by emotion or affect or feelings. We have to calm the flooding in order for you to do what's next, because your brain operates very differently when you're in fight or flight mode or when you're flooded emotionally than when you're thinking logically and rationally. So step 1, calm the noise in your own mind and body. Once you've got yourself calmed a bit and the noise has subsided, your first job is to listen to understand. You remember in the model, there's a sender and a receiver. Assume that you are the receiver first. And your goal is to listen. Now the letters in the word listen are exactly the same as the letters in the word silent. which is coincidental probably, but it's useful. So you want to be silent, calm the noise, but it's more than just being quiet. And you've been in conversations before where somebody's being quiet, but you can tell they're not listening. It's like the lights are on, but nobody's home. Yeah, don't be that person. You are intently listening to understand. Your goal is to make sure that A equals A. And you're on the receiver side of that. So you are listening just as carefully as you can to what's being shared with you so that you can understand what's going on in the sender's mind. You'll hear some noise about this point because sometimes what the sender is trying to tell you is not something that you personally agree with or you have a different opinion about it. Don't get distracted by that. Your goal is simply to understand. Understanding and agreeing are not the same thing. That's going to help, isn't it? All you want to do is understand. If you understand, then you won this round. Now, after the sender has had a chance to express what they're thinking and you are listening to receive over here to make sure you understand, take a moment. This is an extra step, okay? Take a moment to reflect back to the sender your understanding of what A is. Not what you think it is, not your interpretation of it, not your spin on it. The way they see it. Because that's really important for the next step. It's so crucial to understand because the next step is that you are going to postpone your turn to be understood until your spouse, the sender, is completely satisfied that you understand their position. Think about what I'm saying. We're pushing the pause button. I added this as an extra step because people don't do this. They're like, yeah, got it. And then they move into their own discourse or their rebuttal or whatever it is. We're not going there. This step is to pause and postpone your need to be understood until your spouse, your partner, the sender, is completely satisfied that you get it, that you understand their position. Can you do this? This takes some maturity. I'm going to admit that because everything inside of you just wants to clear it up or let them know or express where you're coming from. Yeah, push the pause button. We're getting to that in step 4. This is a crucial step. Postpone your need to be understood until they are satisfied that you do understand their position. I've put you off long enough. Now it's your turn to be understood, but not until your spouse, your partner, the sender is convinced that you understand their position. That was step 3. Now we're moving into step 4. And you get to express your position to be understood. We've got the same goal here. It's just that you switched parts, okay? You used to be the receiver where you're listening to understand. Now you're moving over to be the sender where you are expressing to be understood. Notice the goal here is not to persuade or to convince or to rebut or to argue with what you just heard. No, it's simply to be understood. Remember, we want A to equal A. So you're going to do everything that you can to encode your message in a language that's understood by your receiver, your listener. That's why I'm not talking to you in Finnish for this whole video. I get it that you want to hear it in English. So, the encoding, the noise, calm the noise down. Put it in a context and in a language that is most likely to be understood because that is your goal. If you found this video helpful, the next one you'll want to watch is right up there, how to improve your marriage relationship. Communication isn't all that there is to it. You're going to get some other good tips there, as well as the Positive Relationships Resources playlist here on the channel. Hope you enjoy it.